So now, Rabbi, I get the pleasure of sharing with you some memories and a blessing that's really more of a wish for you. And with apologies, you're going to think that I mixed up the calendar a little bit. I know we're coming up on Shavuot, but the phrase that has been running through my head as I was preparing for today was Bayamim Hahim Bazman Hazeh. Now, normally we think of that in the context of Hanukkah. But if you remember, it was at this time of year, 33 years ago, that I made a phone call to you and said, Rabbi Spitz, how would you like to interview for the position that we now have open at Congregation B'nai Israel? Shavuot was not immediately upon us like it is this year. It was more in the middle of the Omer, but it was around this time in the civil calendar. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, I don't know if you recall, but that phone call was actually put together because when we found out after Pesach that there would be a vacancy here, I called Rabbi Dorf. And I said, Rabbi Dorf, look, do you have any students who were students of yours at what was then the UJ? And since there was no Ziegler School at the time, those students would have gone to JTS. And he said yes, and he gave me your name, and I called. And by good fortune, you were coming out here anyway to also interview, as I recall, with Congregation Sharon. So being the fiscally responsible president that I was grateful that we could share the travel expense with Sharon, and Rabbi came to Orange County. I was also grateful that Sharon had not asked him to participate in a Shabbat. We did. And so on a Friday afternoon, Rabbi shows up at our house because we were having the Friday night dinner that evening. And I don't know if you remember this part, but you showed up, perspiration sort of dripping. I think you had been running or something like this. And this was my first panim al panim with you, was me answering the door and you just sort of saying, hi, I'm Elie Spitz. But you did clean up well for the Shabbat meal, which we all thoroughly enjoyed. Jay Witzling mentioned a few weeks ago that it's a recipe that Rhonda and Sheila and others still use. We came to call it rabbinic chicken because with the search that we had done a few years prior, as well as with welcoming Elie to the community, we always made the same dish. And so in the cookbook, Rhonda has written rabbinic chicken. It was a wonderful Shabbat. We knew what we wanted to do. With Joel Cooperberg's help, we got a contract drafted. I had a trip coming up to New Jersey. I said, I would like to present that contract to Rabbi personally, and I know you remember this part, I said, I would love to meet Linda. So we were able to put that together. It was a classically East Coast day. I started my day in Princeton, New Jersey, where I had some meetings. I took a 6 o'clock Metroliner to New York, got off at Penn Station. Rabbi had given me his address, came out of Penn Station, hailed a cab, got in, gave the cab driver the piece of paper on which I had written the address. He looked at me in my white shirt and tie and blue suit, looked again at the address, turned around to me and said, are you sure? The 3 words that I spoke at that time probably changed the whole course of history for this congregation because I said, yes, I am. But it was a pleasure. I got to meet Linda. As I recall, I also saw the bureau drawer that was to be Joey's first crib, as I recall. But obviously the highlight was presenting you with the contract. And I could tell by the look in your eye, by the handshake, we had a deal. I mean, obviously you wanted to read it over, but I called on the Metroliner back to Philadelphia, where, by the way, I had a luncheon appointment that day. It's a true East Coast experience that I thought we had our rabbi in hand. So who of us thought, I was 36 at the time, you were 34. Who of us thought that this would evolve into a 33-year relationship of rabbi and congregation? It's a wonderful thing. It's an amazing thing. I personally have so benefited from it. I can't begin to tell you. I haven't called you many times over those 33 years for some counseling, but I will say, for the 3 times that I can remember, for the conversations that we had, there was always one phrase out of a 5 or 10 minute conversation, and I can tell you what they were, that there was always one phrase that restored perspective for me. And I really am so grateful for that. What also hit me last week when you were speaking with Ed Levin, you recounted how it was your first opportunity to do fundraising. I have to say that was another learning experience for me, because I had never dealt with a rabbi who, A, was willing to do fundraising, and B, was good at it. But for those Project Genesis meetings where we were together, and subsequently for the foundation meetings, I should tell you, you are the most effective one that I was with. Very, very effective, and you do that so well. The other thing that I learned from you, I think, was how to enthusiastically accept a challenge. And I think that started, we saw it right away. This was a fledgling congregation. When we said we had 100 members, we were stretching the truth a little bit. For those of you that have been members long enough, you remember our palatial digs on B Street. I have to admit I was a little anxious that you were going to think twice about it when you saw B Street. I think Rabbi's office, I don't even think in those days it was a closet. I think it might have been just a desk. I'm not really sure. That's probably, now that I think about it, why you were so enthusiastic to raise funds, now that I think about it. But you've always accepted a challenge. I think we saw it with your service on the law committee. You were tackling issues and writing a tshuva for issues that have changed lives, that really has changed the course, I think, of conservative Judaism. And where we've seen it most recently, and Rabbi and I have had a few conversations about this. He uses the word energized, but with the pandemic, you immediately embraced the challenge. You knew that something had to be done. It could have been a very tenuous time for this congregation. And instead, as we all know, it ended up being the true strength of the congregation. In fact, when you were commenting about Rick Warren and the success of Saddleback Church, and Rabbi commented on the 20,000 people that he has either in attendance, either in person or virtually every Sunday, if you have the chance, look back on YouTube at the hits we had in viewing our high holiday services, or even for Shabbat services. For weekly Shabbat services, if you check in after Shabbat is over, it's not uncommon for us to have 100 views. And for high holidays, we were, we had over 100,000. Yeah, when you add them, maybe all up. So my feeling is that we achieved that sort of world-class status as well. So with all this, it's difficult for a layperson to give you a blessing. But I'll do my best and tell you that for that enthusiasm that you and I had in what was to be 33 years ago, for that energy that I felt, for that optimism that I felt, for the way that you do embrace challenges and address those so positively and have an impact, that's what I wish for you in the next chapter, that same optimism, that same enthusiasm, that same energy, that same commitment is what you'll bring to whatever lies ahead for you, and through that you touch lives continuously as you do here, and that it brings you the happiness and the satisfaction that I hope the last 33 years have brought you here.
We're still in transition with COVID, because my initial instincts sort of go over and give you a hug.
Yeah.
But we're still in transition. Just a brief response. this is also the chance with your words, Hal, and with my response to do and record a little bit of the history of the congregation. I remember vividly that dinner at your and Rhonda's home. It was my first introduction to the search committee. They were people who I was just meeting but felt at home with. What I was at home with is they were just a few years older than me in many cases, but people with a can-do spirit and warmth who clearly liked each other. And at the end of the meal in your home on that Friday night, everybody sang the Birkat, which is not often the case. And I was impressed that this can-do group also had Jewish grounding. Linda didn't join me because she was 9 months pregnant with our son Joey. And I came back to New York and recounted the wonderful experience I had with the people of Sharon and with B'nai Israel. But what so surprised us, having just left on Monday, California, was your call saying, "Can I meet your wife on Wednesday?" And I thought, wow, that is really impressive in terms of being can do, making it happen. And you came over, and Linda and I, when you left, said, and Linda said, if Hal Hurwitz is Congregation B'nai Israel, I see having great potential. And you were just finishing your tenure then as president. I would also have the privilege to have you later on as my only other twice-term president. Hal, you are CBI at its best. You were the one, I say, who offered me the job. You hired me. I'm so grateful that you did. And like today, to share services with you as my partner has indeed been for me continuous joy and satisfaction. You represent CBI at its best. You, in this Shabbat, represent my blessing and privilege. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's my privilege as well.
Thank you.